Hello, everybody, and welcome to the very first installment of our How to Get Hired webinar series. Tonight, we are joined by Dave Price of TriStar Sports, as well as two of his colleagues, Hayes Wilson and Shelby Killoran, and they will be sharing their tips and tricks in getting hired in the accounting industry. This webinar is in preparation for our Wednesdays Meet the Firms fair. And just a little bit of background on myself. My name is McKenna. I am a student worker for the Career Success Team's events and programming. So yeah, I'm excited to host and facilitate tonight's webinar. Just so that all of you guys know, we will have a 45-minute presentation from our presenters tonight, followed by a 15-minute Q&A session. You can submit questions for our presenters at any time at the Q&A box that should be at the bottom of your screen. Or if you have questions for me just on any issues you might be having, you can also put them there. And so that all of you guys know, this session will be recorded and it will be uploaded to the Career Success Team's YouTube channel within a few days of the webinar ending. Links will be sent to students who registered, but otherwise you can check out the Career Success website for the official posting. So yeah, all right. I'll let Dave take it away and we'll get right into it.
Hey everyone, my name is Dave Price. I am a graduate of UC Santa Cruz, class of 2001. Currently work at TriStar Sports and Entertainment. We are a business management firm, kind of a fancy term for saying accountant for the entertainment industry. So with me are a couple of my colleagues, Hayes Wilson and Shelby Killoran. And so what we're going to do is we have a brief slide deck. We're going to go through just some tips on going through the interview process. And then we're going to discuss, we're going to go into each of our respective kind of history of going through the interview process and kind of tell you a little bit about our experiences and, you know, also from the hiring perspective, what to do and not do. But so why don't we just jump to the slide deck, and I'm going to share my screen here. So interviews, TriStar was doing online interviews before we ever got to the pandemic. So the first thing we would tell you is obviously to check your technology. You know, when you're going into an online interview, you don't want to be trying to figure out if it's going to work, troubleshooting it, wasting the 30 or so minutes that have been allocated for you to try and impress upon your skill set with those people. Step number 2, pick your location carefully. So I can tell you as an interviewer, there's nothing more distracting than trying to interview somebody that is in a loud coffee shop or where there's a lot of extraneous noise, things going on in the background. So you want to pick a quiet spot. You should have a neutral background. We don't really want to see how messy your bedroom is. It doesn't really convey that you're the nice, neat, organized accountant that we're looking for. So just, you know, be smart, pick a nice desk or the kitchen table or get away and just, you know, a nice, quiet, distraction-free place to do your interview. I always tell people, you know, dress for the job that you want. It doesn't mean, you know, in this day and age, you don't have to wear a suit to an interview, especially if you're doing it online, but you should make sure that you're dressing for the firm that you are interviewing. I work in the music industry, you know, jeans and a button-up shirt is completely fine. If you have questions about what appropriate dress code is, ask the HR rep that set up the screening. they'll be more than happy to tell you what the code is, what's normal. If you're in doubt, then go, pull out your suit or your nice slacks. But usually try and cater it to the organization you're interviewing with. Always be early. If you're late to an interview, it doesn't really look good. It's pretty self-explanatory. As a screener, you're going to be given maybe 15 to 30 minutes. And so if you keep the person on the other side of that call waiting for 5, that's a large chunk of your time that you've lost. Questions. If you do not ask questions in an interview, at some point during the interview, we're going to ask you whether or not you have any questions. Maybe it could be something that was discussed during the interview. You could have researched the company ahead of time. Point being, if you don't have any questions, it doesn't seem like you're showing any interest to the person that is interviewing. We're not looking to play 20 questions. We don't have all day to do it, but we want to know that you can put together some intelligent questions, maybe make us think a little bit and show that you're intrigued and interested in the position and the company that you are applying for. So this is one that I like. If you have a routine that helps you get in the zone for an interview, you want to be at your best. You want to be confident. You want to come off as knowledgeable. So whether, for me, it's listening to music, I like to amp myself up and get ready. So I have a routine where I'll listen to certain music to get myself in the right frame of mind. Whatever your routine is, do it. You want to understand the company you're interviewing with, who are the leaders, what are the core competencies, and what sets that company apart. Do you guys have anything to add to that one?
If there's like a current event going on, like for example, I interviewed at HCA when they were changing CEOs. So I asked how does this change of leadership affect how the company is going to change the way of doing things? And that was I felt a good question. It was actually one that was posed to me during the staging process. So
okay. So very important, the follow-up. So when we interview candidates, first of all, it's usually HR or someone that is setting up the screenings. And the first round is usually going to be a screener. It's not the decision maker. So if you get past the screener to a person who is more of a decision maker, they could have 3, 4, 8 interviews in a day, and you have no idea what's going to set you apart from the next person. So it could be as simple as maybe at the end of the interview process, the interviewer is kind of on the fence between a couple different candidates. And if you followed up with a pleasant thank you and just a brief message to thank them for the time and let them know that you are really interested, maybe that's enough to sway their opinion of you. So, as soon as you can, maybe not from the parking lot just after you've walked out of the building, but, send a follow-up email, just thank them for their time. If you have a question, feel free to ask it, be brief, be polite, and be to the point. And you never know, that could be enough to get you the job that you're looking for. So that's the end of the slides. So I think what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about our respective experiences. So I'm close to 20 years out of school. I've been through, I came out of Santa Cruz. I went to work at Arthur Andersen. I interviewed on campus with several different firms. Hayes is a senior accountant in our office. Shelby is a staff accountant. They each have different experiences. So when I came out of UC Santa Cruz, I had a job lined up 9 months before I graduated. I went to an on-campus interview. I passed the screening test. I was invited to the office for the next round of interviews. And, clearly I did something well enough in the screening to just, present myself in a good light and get to the next round, which was kind of the decision maker. So when I was at UC Santa Cruz, I participated in the study abroad program, and I did a year abroad in Australia. So I got lucky, and when I went to my interview at the Arthur Andersen office, I interviewed with someone who had done a rotation in Australia, and we ended up talking about our experience in Australia the entire duration of the interview. So, not everyone is going to have that same experience, but for me, that was how I connected with the interviewer. And if there's one thing that I could impress upon people, once you get past the screener, you have at maybe 30 minutes, at maybe 45 minutes, whatever amount of time you have, that's what you have to make a connection with the person that you're interviewing with. For me, it was my experience in the study abroad program and the fact that we both lived in a similar area. And, we got along. It was like we were old friends. We talked about our experiences, our favorite places. That was enough to get me the job. Now, I've never had another experience like it, but I'm glad I did, and it worked. So I think, as now on the other side of things, as someone who is interviewing people, I can tell you, I can teach just about anybody with basic knowledge accounting, but if you're looking to go into audit or tax, what you can't account for is the fact that I'm going to have to spend 8 to 10 hours a day in a room with you. So, I need to be able to get along and like the person that I'm in that room with, because we're going to be spending a lot of time together. So it's not always the most technical person or the person with the most technical experience that is going to get the job, because at the end of the day, personality is definitely a factor. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the process. So why don't we start, I think, Hayes, if you want to tell us a little bit about your experience, because you actually came to TriStar, and I believe you went through the online interview process. And so we were doing online interviews, like I said, before the pandemic occurred. We had a process where we would have a screening interview, we would have a person do a video, submit that would get reviewed, and then on and on. So Hayes, I'm going to punt it to you if you want to kind of chime in with your story.
Of course. So I also came to TriStar right out of college. So I was in a position like a lot of you are probably right now, on LinkedIn every single day, throwing my resume to any job that I thought was impressive or cool or would get me out of North Georgia. So I found TriStar and I submitted my resume, and I got that first initial screener just telling me that they wanted me to submit a accounting test. So that's something that TriStar does. It's a little different. I don't think I had anyone else ask to actually test my accounting skills. So once I submitted that, I got another request to do a video interview. So what TriStar did was they sent us a list of questions that needed to be answered within that video interview. And it was really nice because I actually got to redo my video. So that was a nice little something, especially being straight out of college and not having as much interview experience. It gave me some time to kind of revise and watch everything over and come up with those answers that I thought showed my accounting skills and also my personal skills just in a better light. So once I submitted that, I got a request for the in-person interview. So that was an interesting thing as well, and getting to meet with people face-to-face is always nice. But I think some of those things we talked about that stood out to me, I really tried to make that personal connection, because like Dave was saying, and now that I've been here for 4 years and I'm one of the people that's now interviewing other candidates, one thing we definitely look for is that personal connection. Is this somebody that is going to be a team player that I'm going to get along with, that's going to, be eager to learn from other people? They're going to want to work together as a team, and just somebody that's going to be a really good culture fit. So during the interview process, I definitely went out of my way to try and make those connections, and during my follow-up, make it really personal and name the people who interviewed me. Loved meeting, Melissa and Kayla. Really would enjoy being on either of their teams. They seem so well experienced. Making just those little connections, I think, set me apart, because I know there was at least 4 other candidates for my position when I was hired. So I think those are all really good tips.
So you had to do a video interview or a video of yourself. How do you try and connect? Because I mean, that's a very cold thing to do, to sit in front of a camera and just kind of rattle off answers to questions. Did you do anything to make yourself be more personable, or just be yourself, or how did you go about doing that?
Yeah, so they gave us questions ahead of time, and a lot of the questions incorporated tell me a story of when, or tell me a personal experience that would relate to this. And I kind of did my strategic planning. I wrote all my answers out. I went over them multiple times, stood in front of the mirror, explained my stories, and tried to make it as much of a connection as possible without actually having somebody looking back at the screen. But it definitely took several redos and a lot of critique from my college roommates. But it was an interesting experience, and it really kind of gave me a different perspective on how I could show my personality and my experience to make someone want to meet you, essentially.
Okay. So when you got past the video interview, did you do anything to prepare for the in-person? Did you study different types of interviewing styles? Did you go in completely cold? How did you research the company, or did you research the company? What did you know?
Yes, so I did a lot of research. Of course, being the fact that it's sports and entertainment industry, I think that's something anyone coming straight out of college, it just sounds super cool. So I did all my research. I studied the core values that you can see up on our wall. I was currently in an internship, so I asked my manager at my internship if they would be so kind as to write me a letter of recommendation. They researched the company. They pointed out each core value that they thought I had. So I took that with me, and then I sat in the car. I drove from Atlanta to Nashville. So for 4 hours, I was in complete silence, preparing myself for any questions that may be asked. I used my school's resource center. So I had them review my resume that I tailored specifically to the job description that was on LinkedIn for the position I was applying for. So they assisted me in reviewing my resume and recommending changes that they thought would make me look like a better candidate. And then they also gave me a lot of resources on typical questions that you could be asked in an interview. So I had about 2 pages of questions that I went through. I come up with several personal stories of your weaknesses, your strengths, certain times where you had to overcome adversity in the workplace or in school, in your personal environment. So I really took the time to use those resources, and I had everything kind of lined up in my mind. And like I said, I'm kind of like a silent thinker, so I just really kind of meditated and thought of every possible answer I could give.
Did you find that, were you asked any of those questions in the process? Did that help in your search?
So with TriStar, it did not, because I think we don't really have the typical like corporate interview structure. So once you get to the in-person interview with our firm, especially now that I'm on the other side of things, I feel like you already know you have like the skill set that it takes. We've done the accounting test, we've looked at your resume, you have kind of the glue right there. So we're looking more, are you going to be a good culture fit? Are we going to connect with you? Are we going to want to work with you? Are you going to strive to improve here? So with TriStar, it did not, but I also had other interviews in Nashville while I was in town, and they were larger companies, big corporations, and they asked pretty much read off the sheet that I've been studying. So I used my answers there, and I got an offer from them as well. So.
Okay. So your experience, you went through the video process, you went through the online interviews. Shelby, I know you have a very different experience. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended up here and what your search looked like?
So first, I'll echo a lot of the points Kate's made about using your school resources. I kind of landed at TriStar through a series of interviews, or through a series of internships, and then with people I was in class with. So my first internship that I got while I was in university was through a career fair, Career Connection, I think is what it's called, that the school put on. And then through that, I got my second internship, and through that, I met the people who I ended up in class with that I got this job through. So it was a whole series of things. But basically, how I ended up at TriStar was I was sitting in my federal income tax class, and 2 of the girls that I was sitting next to were talking about how they just started interning at, or had just been hired, I think, part-time here at TriStar. And I was like, hey, I'm at another business management firm, literally right down the road. If there's an opening, let me know. I'm looking to move on from that internship. And so one of them ended up getting hired full-time. And so I said to her, I was like, hey, is there anybody that's taking your position? And she said, no, do you want it? I said, yeah, put my name down. So she had me email my resume in. And so I got straight to the in-person interview that way, because I came from a recommendation. And so did it for the interview, interviewed with who then became my boss, and was working part-time while I finished school. So that I started part-time my second semester of my senior year, and then got hired part-time, went straight to graduate school, worked part-time half of graduate school, and then got hired full-time the last half of graduate school. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And then they, sorry, go ahead.
So essentially, you kind of networked your way into a job, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you knew somebody, you reached out to that person, they were able to put you in touch with the appropriate person that you then was actually a decision maker and was able to set up an interview and then hire you. Okay. What else were you gonna say?
Just the kind of the big takeaway from that is to use your resources. I knew a lot of people in class who didn't talk to anybody that they were in class with. They just showed up to their 9 a.m., put their head down, and then walked back out. I never really understood that. I guess if you talk to it, but like talk to the people that are around you and see like where they at, who are they interning with, who have they met, who have they gotten coffee with. You know, your friends are your network, and the people you're in class with are the people that you're going to be in industry with. And so consider them part of your network and use those relationships that you build while you're in school. Because I still have friendships that are now people who are in my network who work in the industry as well.
So going back to what you just said, so talking about using your relationships or building relationships throughout school. So, you know, lots of people have different experiences. Some are working while they're going to school, others are not. How is it best to build your network? I mean, obviously, if you're working, you're networking with people you see every day. If you're not, maybe, you know, in California, maybe you want to work in the Bay Area, or you want to go back to LA or San Diego. Maybe you want to work in a particular field. If you don't have connections in those fields, how would you guys have gone about trying to extend your network?
First of all, I think talking to people who are in classes, they're, I mean, the school that I went to, a lot of the students are very well connected. And so talking with them and learning who they were talking with and where they were interning. But then again, using your school's network. The university I went to also put on several programs like these where they'd have professionals from various parts of the industry come in and talk, and just, of course, this was easier when we were in person, but coming up afterwards and saying, hi, this is who I am. I thought that this part of what you said was really interesting. I'd love to get coffee with you. That's a really great way to kind of start building those relationships. Of course, the important part there is to follow up on that and to make sure that you're actually investing in that relationship with that person and not just being like, yeah, I got a job through that person, I'm moving on now.
But I think one of the important things to come out of that is the ask. You can't be afraid to ask for something. You know, we work in the music industry, and although we're not in management, I mean, managers receive all sorts of ridiculous requests from their clients, and they have to go out and ask for things that they may or may not want to, but the bottom line is they have to ask. So I try and impress upon people that, you know, if you want something and you want to go for something, you can't be afraid to ask for it, because the worst that somebody can do at the end of the day is say no. And, you know, I've reached out to people that I've had no affiliation or relationships with just because I was interested in getting involved in an organization, and, you know, volunteered or asked how I could help. And, you know, lo and behold, I worked my way in there and, you know, meet new people, make new friends. So I think that's really important. I think a common denominator between the three of us is that we all went through our school's, you know, school resource center. So that way, you know I went through, I think we had our interviews there when I was doing it, but, you know, don't, you know, use the resources that are available to you for sure. And there's certain firms, you know, they're always going to look to hire candidates from the school to, you know, which they went to. Those are easy connections. But, you know, so I came out of UC Santa Cruz, I went to work in public accounting. I had played in a band when I was in Santa Cruz. I loved music, but wasn't really doing anything professional. And I kind of got burnt out on it. And at one point I went to the resource center and I was asked, I said, I have this passion for music, but I have this practical experience of accounting. How can I mix the two? And they put me in touch with someone in Los Angeles who, was familiar with what these things called business management firms were, who was able to kind of point me and guide me in the right direction. So, I had reached out for assistance to a resource and, they were able to tell me about something that I had no idea about. And, I've been working in the field for many years since. So again, just, make use of your resources. Don't be afraid to ask questions, ask for help, or, ask if you can, volunteer, whatever it is you're trying to do. I think that's really important to stay open-minded. Do either of you have anything to add to your stories? Anything we've discussed so far? Okay.
It is interesting now that I'm on the other side of interviewing. It's kind of eye-opening what you look for now versus what I thought, people might be looking for. But really, like for me, it's that personal connection of can you engage and show your interest. I don't want to hire somebody that just seems like they're there because they're looking for a salary. I want to hire somebody who is really truly interested in the job and moving up and progressing and becoming part of a team. So
I agree. And like I said before, I think that connection and being able to work with somebody is so important, and that will take you so much farther than trying to convey your experience. We know that when we hire someone, and I think this is true for a lot of organizations, especially when we're hiring straight out of college, we understand that you're not going to come in knowing everything. We don't expect you to know it. What we do expect is a positive attitude, an eagerness to learn, and a desire to move ahead and work hard. If you can do those things, we can teach you the rest of the skills. So you have a clear, you've completed the building blocks by going through the classes. Now it's time to get some actual experience, and that's what we're going to teach you, but you have to want to do it and take it to the next level. And as long as we can get along and kind of find that personal connection, I think that's going to go a long way towards getting you your next position. So I know we still have a lot of time. McKenna, are there any questions we can answer so far?
Yeah, we have 2 questions. Oh, now we're getting more questions as we speak. Okay, so the first question is, what should I reply if I don't understand the question? Is it okay if I ask interviewers to repeat the questions? Oh.
It's getting a little late here, so our lights are on auto. So the question was, what do I ask if I don't understand the question? Is it okay to ask to repeat the question?
Yes.
I think it's totally fine to ask, to politely repeat the question. I'm sorry, could you repeat that one more time for me? It's an easy way to stall, to kind of give yourself a second to think about an answer. You don't want to feel rushed. You don't want to just blurt out something and not address the question. That's probably worse. So by the same token, you also don't want to ask them to repeat the question every time. So I think it wouldn't bother me at all if somebody asked me to repeat the question. And I can think of instances where that's happened. You guys have anything to add to that?
You asking, can you be more specific, shows that I think you're interested, but that also you want to be able to get to the point that they're trying to get you to.
Okay. All right, so we can move on to the second question. What are some of the most challenging aspects of being an accountant?
You know, I think it's going to be different. There's so many different fields of accounting, types of accounting. You know, just within our company, we have a business management department which focuses on personal finances. We have a touring department which does touring. We have royalties, which does royalties. We have a tax department which just does tax returns. So every accounting firm you go to is going to have different specialties. And, you know, if you choose to do tax work, that's completely different than being an auditor. You know, I'm kind of a unique person in that I've done both. So, you know, they're completely different beasts, and it's not for everyone. You have to kind of find, you know, the area that you like. Dealing with GAAP, you know, in the GAAP world and SEC reporting is completely different than, you know, preparing tax basis financials, which are what we do for our personal clients. And so for me, what I like about my current job and my current role is the variety. I see so much of so many different things. I have a lot of exposure to things. And, you know, earlier in my career when I was younger and I was working in public accounting, I mean, it's a great experience. It's, you know, it's very valuable. You learn to look at things in a completely different way, kind of an eye of healthy skepticism. But I mean, the hours are brutal. You know, I think anyone who works in public accounting will tell you that they get their money's worth. So I don't know if that totally answers the question, but you just got to figure out the area of accounting that, you know, you think you're going to like, and then kind of try and go in that direction. But having said that, if you find that you're in an area, you end up in an area that doesn't really work for you, don't be afraid to pull the ripcord and go a different direction. You know, it's very easy to make changes early on in your career, and nobody is going to look at you twice or think any less of you. But the farther you go down that road and the more experience you have, the harder it is going to be to make a change. And that cover it, or you guys have anything to add?
No, I think it's okay because, you know, if you guys are in accounting, I remember all of the career fairs that I went to and all of my professors basically giving you the option of tax or audit. Which one do you want to do, tax or audit? And I was like, I hate business. So I really wanted to go more of the like financial accounting, more of like the bookkeeper kind of role, and have a more broad experience. And I feel like that was frowned upon. And then I found this job, which kind of ties everything together. And it's like exactly what I was looking for in the accounting field. And I didn't even know it existed until I stumbled across it on LinkedIn. But don't be scared, because I, you know, was just always told you either have to pick tax or audit. That's the only way you're going to have a successful career, and you're going to, you know, really earn good money and be successful. And that's just not true. I think you can find what you're passionate about and what really intrigues you and go that route. And, you know, you can kind of blaze your own trail, I guess.
Okay, awesome. All right, so our next question is, I'm an econ student or econ major student, and I only took one accounting class before. Would this be a big detractor when I try to apply for a job as an accountant?
It's going to be hard unless you have prior experience. So my degree is in business management economics. I believe I was the first year that that program actually had, I think it was the first year that business management, that became a thing. And before that, it was just economics. And I took 6 accounting classes. That was all UCSC offered at the time. And that hasn't been a problem for me. But, usually I see more often than not, people are looking for, an accounting degree or accounting, at least an emphasis. If you've only taken one accounting class, the problem is going to be you've kind of just touched on the subject. Maybe you know your debits and credits, but you don't really know a lot more than that. And you're not going to be, you wouldn't have been exposed to things like cost accounting, managerial accounting, and maybe those aren't things we all use every day, but, kind of the more exposure and experience you have to something, the stronger a candidate you're going to be for
that. Okay, all right. So our next question is, part of the first interviews have to do with the person being cultured and if they will be a great addition to the team. But on the technical part, what types of accounting questions would you ask?
One of you guys want to take this one?
One really good question is what kind of technology they use. I think it's really great if you have any experience with their technology. I think it makes you stand out. Also, potentially you might be a better fit just because you've already had some experience with that. That's a little less training that you're going to require as opposed to maybe some other candidates.
I think it's definitely like par for the course to be able to put proficient Microsoft Office. But if you haven't taken like a proficiency in Excel test or course, like they're available, I would 100% recommend that. Because if you are still using like, I don't know, basic functions, you don't know how to use a VLOOKUP, like that's definitely something that I think in technical accounting world is absolutely necessary that you know by now. So that's kind of the technical side of it.
Yeah, I would say coming out of college, I know things have changed, but I had 0 Excel experience. I learned that on the job, and it would have been so much easier had I had a basic knowledge of it. I didn't realize how bad I was at Excel until I really got thrown into it. But I would say these days it's a must that, you got to know your shortcut keys. You need to know how to use pivot tables. If you can confidently use those, you're going to be ahead of the curve a little bit. I've had interns the last couple of years that come in and, they don't know how to use a 10 key. That, they're trying to hunt and peck on the numbers above the letters, and it's, if you're going to be in accounting, it's just not efficient. So if you can get some basic skills, learn how to use a 10 key, learn your shortcut commands, figure out how to use pivot tables, that's going to put you in pretty good standing.
Awesome. All right. Our next question is, what are the qualifications to be a marketing manager?
To be a marketing manager?
Yes. I don't know entirely if you're able to answer that, and that's okay if you're not.
Yeah, I'm not, we're purely accounting, so
Okay.
I wouldn't be able to answer that one.
Okay, no worries. All right. Next question is, I understand that there is a certain amount of professionalism one needs in a job interview, but where do you draw the fine line of upholding a professional image versus a professional facade? What happens when one's character on camera is different than their natural character off camera?
This hits on something that I thought about when we were talking earlier about when you are interviewing, whoever is interviewing you is looking for someone that fits in. That doesn't mean that you need to put on a fake face. Like you don't, professionalism is necessary in any workplace, and you should leave what you say with your friends, and that you should come into work ready to be a professional and come into your interview ready to be a professional. But that doesn't mean that you have to be straight back the entire time. There's a difference between, I think, being professional and being boring. I think that there's a difference there. And when you're interviewing, you want to bring your personality into it, and you want to bring your personality, not the person who sits next to you in your tax class's personality. I think, and if you're going to be working with these people, they're going to notice that this person is completely different than how they were in the interview. Like that's going to be pretty obvious, and that's going to, stick with you while you're at that job and might follow you.
So I guess I had a different reaction to the question. And so I think, in the digital age that we live in now, it's fair to say that if I see a resume come across my desk, or I see, somebody's LinkedIn or something, it's pretty safe to say that somebody can do a Google search to see what comes up. I know I've done it on my clients, or, related invoices that come through. And, honestly, I shouldn't be able to find pictures of, what you do on Friday or Saturday. There needs to be a distinct difference between, your personal life and your professional life. That doesn't mean that you have to be a completely different person, but we don't expect you to come in talking about, partying or hanging out at bars, or, that's not the professional vibe we're going for. So lock down your socials, I would probably say, is a safe bet if you're, coming out of college, job hunting. Different people are going to have, very different things on there. So anything that is going to, or could possibly sway somebody, why go to the trouble? Why put that at risk? We can argue back and forth about whether or not that should be a consideration or not, but why even put it out there to go to the trouble? Just don't make it an issue. So, you're looking to come in and connect on a personal level with the person interviewing, but that doesn't mean that, you need to hang out at the same bar, talk about how many shots you can do. I mean, maybe you like the same sports team, maybe you lived in the same area, I guess maybe we're talking about on a more generic level. So, Hayes, do you have anything to?
I agree. I'll touch on the social media thing because this was really becoming a big deal. I feel like when I graduated 4 years ago was when everybody was like, be careful what you're putting on Instagram and on Facebook, on Twitter. And there was the whole culture thing of it's me, it's who I am, I'm going to do what I want. But now that I'm in the position I'm in and I'm talking to these clients all day, I would not want them to see a photo of me completely trashed on a Saturday night out at a bar in a skimpy outfit. And then Monday morning I get there and I tell them, hey, I'm gonna go ahead and draft this $1 million payment out of your bank account. I wouldn't want to present myself as an unprofessional manager on social media, where some of them do follow our Instagram accounts and have a personal relationship with us. I don't want them to know me as the Saturday night party girl. I am the professional accountant that you hired to manage your millions of dollars and create a strategic goal for you to continue investing and growing your wealth. So I think that still goes back to dress for the job that you want, present yourself in a way that you would want your clients, your colleagues to view you. Because ultimately the way you present yourself is how successful you're going to be. That is part of what gets you the earned respect, and that's going to be a big part of your career. So that's super, super important. I think it's overlooked a lot, and especially in our culture now, it is kind of like, don't tell me what to do, but just a bit of advice. You know, how would you want somebody that's going to be working closely with you, you know, to be behaving? And
it's kind of like if you were starting your own company and you were putting your brand image out there. I mean, when you're sending your resume off and you're coming in to interview, you're putting your brand out there. So would you be putting those other photos and all that stuff out there with it? Is that what you want your brand to represent? You know, it's fine to have it, but you don't want it to be easily accessible is what I would think. So, you know, you got to portray the image you want to portray. You don't have to be an entirely different person, but, you know, and if you do have to be an entirely different person, maybe you're not looking for a job at the right place. That's the other thing I would say.
Awesome. Great advice. Okay, so our next question is, my major is not business management or economics and not closely related to either of them, but I am taking as many accounting courses as possible. Would I still face an initial barrier from not having said degrees?
I'd say it depends upon what you're looking for and the experience. It's not a deal breaker, but, you know, if you're working while you're in college, you're doing, you know, you're working as a bookkeeper, doing the books for a local business, you know, that in conjunction with having taken some accounting courses is going to go a long way to getting the job. You know, obviously there's going to be a preference towards someone with a degree or more experience. But again, it's not a deal breaker. I would think you just need to supplement it with something else.
Okay. That does it for the questions that we have so far. If any of our viewers want to ask any more, we can keep it open. I'll give it like a minute maybe to see if we have any more questions. But yeah, is there anything else you guys would like to say right now? Or, I mean, you guys have already said so much. It's been almost an hour now, but we still have 5 minutes left technically. So if any of our visitors have any last questions that they want to ask, go for it.
I don't have anything else that comes to my mind. I think we've covered a lot of ground. Ultimately, like we said, you gotta, you know, kind of put the image out there and portray the image that you want to portray in the business life. You know, don't be afraid to network. You know, make the ask for help or connections or referral. And, you know, like we said, use your resources. You pay a lot to go to school there, so get your money's worth. Use the resource center and, you know, use your network, do your research. You know, don't be afraid to ask if you get an interview, ask the HR person who you're going to be interviewing with. You know, go, if they give you their names, go to their LinkedIn's, see who their connections are, see what their background is, any information you can get to find that common thread of where you guys may have some similarities, or anything that might kick off that conversation to kind of take less focus away from the nuts and bolts of the interview, and connect on a more personal level.
Okay, it looks like we have 2 final questions for tonight. So the first one is, would it be bad to wear a headset during the interview?
I've never seen anyone wear a headset during an interview. I don't know that it would be bad, as long as your technology was functioning. It might be a little distracting if you have a big headset covering your ear and going over your head. It's probably a smarter play to just maybe wear some earbuds. That way you can hear clearly and it's not quite as distracting. But it's not a deal breaker.
Okay, and for our final question tonight, we have two other questions, sorry. What things do you like the most and the least working as an accountant?
Why don't one of you guys take this first? And
I remember asking that same question when I was getting coffee with people, and the one answer that someone gave that I never understood until about a year ago was the people and the people. Because absolutely the best part about it is working with people who are the same level of nerdy as you, of, oh my God, look at this pivot table that I made, isn't it pretty? But then also dealing with clients who don't understand why I need a W-9 for your painter service, or something like that can be kind of hair-wrenching. But I think that's one of the best answers that I've ever heard. So I'll take credit for it, but I'll share it.
Hayes, do you have anything to add?
No, that's pretty spot on. We do have some incredibly long hours during certain seasons. If you're in tax season, I know auditing has some crazy hours too. And then even with business management, we're about to get into our busy season, and we'll be here. I don't know, I'm usually here at least like 3 nights a week until like 9 or 10 p.m. So a lot of 12-hour days along with our typical 8 to 9 hour days. So that can get a little stressful and exhausting. But then also, like Shelby was saying, the people, our clients and just like our colleagues, like we really have a cool work environment, and we really are friends. We'll cut up with each other and joke from across the office like all day long. Shelby hears me making jokes and picking at everyone. So it's really fun work environment, and getting to deal with the clients that we work with is really rewarding. To see that light bulb in their minds go off when you explain that, all those Uber charges aren't coded to the account Uber, but ground transportation. And, a light bulb comes on, and then they ask you to change it to just say Uber, so they know what it is from now on. So little funny things like that, just getting to deal with people who aren't accounting minded, can be fun and frustrating all in one. So
I think for me, so I've worked in public accounting and audit. I've worked in tax. I work in more personal accounting now. I think the thing that I don't like is, I'm tied to a desk for 40 plus hours a week, and that just doesn't feel natural. It's not normal to have to sit that long. And so that's always been tough. I've always struggled with that. And on the plus side, I got into this line of work because I have a knack for numbers. I like puzzles and solving things. And I thought that I could help people with understanding their finances, because I seem to have a knack for it. So that's kind of, like they said, the people. And so for me, it's like interacting with people, the puzzles of, solving things and, figuring stuff out. But I'd love to not be chained to a desk for so long.
Okay, so we are at time, so that will have to be our last question, unfortunately, for the night. Just a couple of things before we close. A big thank you to our presenters tonight. Thank you guys so much for joining us and answering our questions. Just so that all of the students know, as soon as you close the webinar window, you will be asked to complete a survey. So if you can, please do so that we can really make these events as great as they can be. And then just a couple of upcoming virtual events. We have Meet the Firms, which is our accounting fair on Wednesday. We also have a grad fair workshop next Thursday, and the graduate and professional school fair is October 19th to 23rd. So either check us out on UCSC careers, which is our website, or check us out on Handshake. So yeah, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you to our presenters so much. Yeah.
Thanks for having us, guys. Good luck to everyone.
Have a great night, guys.
All right, take care.
Bye.